Thank you, Mr Deputy President. Well, like Senator Brockman, I was sitting in here doing my duty, listening to Senator Cadell, listening to Senator Colbeck, and it is just unbelievable. Senator Colbeck referred to the hypocrisy was breathtaking. Well, what we do know about the Australian Greens is if they didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have standards at all. And I think we're starting to see that also from those opposite, because we will quite often hear, and I know Senator Coney, through you, Mr Deputy President, Senator Coney likes to get out and visit with Victorian farmers. His Facebook, his Instagram's quite full with those photos out, meeting with farmers and promoting agriculture. And I mean, quite often on this side of the chamber we actually suggest that Senator Coney should actually be the minister, because potentially he might stand up to Minister Boland. Here, that's right, Senator Davey. But I just don't know how Senator Coney's going to go out to those farmers anymore, when he will not even support an inquiry to ensure that those farmers are going to be appropriately compensated as their land values plummet, as their ability to farm their land. And, you know, I was just listening to Senator Davey talking about what's going to happen to farm values. Well, perhaps this is part of their hidden motivation when they put the super caps in, as they absolutely destroyed farmers, and the fact that they'll be able to use the farms as their superannuation. This is actually their way of helping, because if they diminish the values of those property, they might not hit the $3 million threshold anymore, because they're no longer productive farmland. I mean, it is just, I don't know how anyone sitting opposite in the government can turn up and talk to a farmer or a farming group and look them in the eye and say, we don't care, you don't matter, and we're going to do everything we can to barge over you. We know in the Greens, it's kind of like a triangle that we have when it comes to their values and their concerns. And values I use in the loosest possible way as a term when approaching and referring to the Greens. But we know at the pinnacle of that triangle is renewable energy. So it's solar panels and it's wind farms, and it's all about let's get that renewable energy. And sitting just underneath is critical minerals, because we know coal bad, critical minerals good. There's two different types of mining because it feeds into their renewable energy obsession. I mean, you cannot ask a question of the Greens, what happens when one of those electric vehicles catches on fire? How do we even put the fire out? You know how dangerous a chemical battery fire is? You just got to let it burn. But don't worry, that's okay, because it's an EV, it's a renewable car. How much is it going to cost for everyday Australians to have to put chargers in their houses? Well, that doesn't matter, because cost of living pressures aren't that applicable when we talk about renewable energy and EVs and all of their obsessions. I remember, you know, I am old enough, I wasn't around in 1949, Senator Colbeck, but I am old enough to remember when the Greens, they used to be about Save the Whales. They used to be Save the Whales. Remember they used to have those stickers that were on everyone's cars, Save the Whales? Well, you could bugger the whales. I got a wind farm, and I got an offshore wind farm that's going to upset their migration routes, going to completely decimate whale populations, but that's okay because it's a wind farm.
They donate more than whales.
And they do. Wind farm operators donate much more than whales. Koalas. I mean, Senator Hanson-Young comes in here almost regularly to talk about the plight of koalas and how tragic it is for koalas, and very emotionally explains to us that they are at risk and we need to do more to protect the koalas. Except if we want to build solar panels over their habitat. Except if we want to put power lines right through a koala habitat, then bugger the koalas. Again, potentially it's because solar panel operators contribute more than the koalas when it comes to political donations. You know, in the koala suit and the bucket, God, you do long for the days of Senator Patrick when you knew there'd be an outfit coming up. But, you know, it is absolutely astounding. But the thing is, though, this is not even about there being some sort of... This isn't an amendment to a piece of legislation. This isn't saying, no, we're not going to support this rewiring the grid, which, quite frankly, will more than likely end up one of the most expensive white elephants this country's ever seen. But, you know, the Labor Party will probably still compete for those titles. You know, they like a bit of a bantamweight fight over how much money they can waste because, you know, it's just Australian taxpayers. But, you know, it's not even about that. This is about giving Australians who pay taxes, who vote, who are actually covered by the Constitution at the moment. All of us are equally covered by the Constitution. There isn't a carve-out that says all Australians are covered by this document except for farmers, fishers. Oh, and the irony that Indigenous Australians are currently being told they need their own voice in the Constitution, they aren't covered by this. Their voices don't count. I mean, I know sitting on this side with my female colleagues, we're the wrong kind of woman. We know that when, left-wing women all rally around each other and protect the women, and it's all women and Me Too and go, 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 but not conservative women. They're the wrong kind of women. I've actually got the T-shirt thanks to Caroline de Russo. We know we're the wrong kind of women, but there's the wrong kind of Indigenous voices. I mean, we heard Senator Little asking questions today, and the denigration and the condescension and the paternalisation and the just unbelievable commentary coming from those opposite, because Senator Little's the wrong kind of Indigenous voice. Senator Nampijinga Price is the wrong kind of Indigenous voice. We know Warren Mundine's the wrong kind of Indigenous voice. Well, apparently now, all those Indigenous voices out in rural and regional Australia, they're the wrong kind of voice too. But if we start to look at how this is all mapping out, I mean, honestly, bring on the asteroid. It is just turning into crazy town. It is seriously turning into crazy town here, because we've got WA putting in all these heritage laws that farmers are protesting. Senator Wong's answer was just insane. I mean, I feel for Senator Wong. I'm not sure she's ever been to a farm, so I can understand that it's probably difficult for her to speak with any real authority in this area. But we have farmers having mass rallies and meetings because they are being charged. It is a rort. It is an absolute scam. These businesses now charging to come on and decide what is heritage and Indigenous culture on their land. And in fact, it's not even farmers there. This is the best part. It's the suburban blocks. It's like you can't even put the new camellia in because you might have to dig a little bit too deep, and you've got to pay $3,000 to the local Indigenous group to come and go, it's all right, camellia can go in. I mean, it's just lunacy. But so we've got over there that we've got to protect all this Indigenous heritage and that we won't hear from the Labor Party that they'll rule out. The government will not rule out that they will not roll these laws out across the country. If the voice gets up, we know it's voice, treaty, truth-telling, and guess what else it'll be? Cultural heritage protections for every inch of this country so that another cottage industry can set up. But not for the Indigenous Australians that are based out in the regions that they're about to just pound their land through with all of these absolute ridiculous power lines, no sense of sensibility whether they're going to impact any cultural sensitive areas. Nothing. They probably won't even look at it. So we now know we've got the wrong kind of women in this place and we've got the wrong kind of Indigenous voices. And I think those Indigenous voices out in rural and regional Australia might actually be those very sensible Indigenous people that are saying this voice thing is absolutely ridiculous. It's going to do nothing to protect us, because not only is it going to divide this nation, it is dividing this nation, it has divided this nation and will continue to do so. But what it is actually saying to Indigenous Australians, we're going to divide you. We're going to divide you into Indigenous Australians in the inner city that live in the teal seats and the ALP seats and the green seats. We're going to divide it up. The Indigenous voices in the inner city, you're all kosher, you're all good. Happy to hear from you. You just tell us how great we all are and we'll help boost you with another cottage industry and keep that cash flowing. But if you're a rural and regional Indigenous Australian, not on your life, my friends. You guys just shuck it up. We don't mind if we damage your cultural sites. We don't care. Because guess what? We get a power line that's having to be built because solar and wind can't connect to the current grid. So let's remember, though, this isn't the only grid. This is grid number 2. So a lot of these farms already have this situation. Now, I'm just going to mention the word nuclear. You know the thing about nuclear? That those opposite, and I am going to be popping the popcorn to watch the Labor Party convention when this all comes up. Very, very interested to see where some of the questions that were asked, even today in question time, where those people sit when the votes come through, because I think the left delegation may have some different views than what Senator Green's question was today in question time. So I'll be really interested to see where everyone's sitting at the conference or convention, whatever the Labor Party call it, on the weekend. But we won't be allowed to talk about nuclear. But you know the thing about nuclear? For lack of a better analogy, it actually plugs into our current grid. So I mean, think of it this way. You had a nuclear power plant, you just plug it in. Like you plug the vacuum in. Well, if you vacuum. You know, the iron. Not quite sure I'm big on that either, Senator Cadell, but, you know, I hear it's done. I hear there is a thing called plugging in an iron. But this is what we can do with nuclear energy. We can plug it in to the current grid. We do not need to destroy farmland. We do not need to destroy fishers. We do not need to disrespect rural and regional Indigenous Australians to make the lefties in the city, with their pyramid of concerns where renewable energy is at the top, feel good about themselves. This is an absolute disgrace that you will not support just an inquiry. Just an inquiry. Just so those farmers who pay a lot of taxes, can come in and provide our food. So I hope none of you are going home tonight and thinking of having a steak. Maybe not down to Porsches and having a bit of fried rice, because we won't be getting rice out of the Riverina anymore. Hope you're not going out for dinner and eating any of that food, drinking any of that wine that our farmers produce, because you are turning your back on them, because you will not allow them to come in here and explain what is happening on their land, to their families, to their business. And like Senator Brockman, I look forward to being here. Transmission Tuesday. I think we'll coin the term. We'll hit back here every Tuesday. Transmission Tuesday it is. We might get T-shirts. I don't know. Maybe get a drinks card. Transmission Tuesday's on. RSVP optional. Just come. Have a crack. Because these guys are unbelievable. Unbelievable. And we're going to see Labor and the Greens. We'll see Senator Pocock. I vaguely remember him chaining himself to stuff because he didn't want trees cut down. And trees now, trees are irrelevant because in the pinnacle, wind farms and solar panels. Wind farms and solar panels trump all. So maybe some sense will see the light. We can hope Senator Coney, and not actually sure there's anyone else, poor Senator Coney, who actually visits a farm, that he can speak some sense here to his Labor colleagues and go, hey guys, it's an inquiry. Let the farmers have their say. Let the fishers have their say. And then perhaps for those that are the most vocal on supporting of the Indigenous voice, perhaps the Prime Minister, he seems to be leading the charge on this whole thing, and just like to put on record, if it fails, welcome Mr Albanese, that would be your mistake. That is all at your feet. But perhaps Mr Albanese, who's such a big proponent of the voice and so keen to give Indigenous Australians a voice, he might just point out to his team here in the Senate that this is an inquiry to give Indigenous Australians a voice over what significant cultural sites might be damaged. That those Indigenous Australians deserve a voice. But I fear that we may be hoping too much, because as I said at the beginning, and I'll say it again and finish up, if they didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all.